Leader of the third party.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Indigenous people in BC comprise less than 5% of the province's population. Despite this, Indigenous children have been and continue to be disproportionately represented in care. Indeed, in 2020, Indigenous children were 19 times more likely than non-Indigenous children to be in the child welfare system. Last September, Justice Skolrud ordered certification of a class action lawsuit in the case of KS versus British Columbia, the Ministry of Children and Family Development. The class action was set to provide justice to children in care who were victims of the government's decades-long negligence. Given the disproportionate representation of Indigenous children in government care, this class action represented an important step towards reconciliation. Despite this, the Office of the Attorney General is now appealing the decision to certify this class action. Mr. Speaker, this government has expressed a desire to pursue meaningful reconciliation. However, it is actively fighting against justice for Indigenous children in care. My question is to the Attorney General and Minister responsible for housing. How can the government be committed to reconciliation while actively fighting against justice for children that have survived the child welfare system?
Minister of Children and Family Development.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Thank you to the member for the question. As she mentioned and as she knows, the matter is before the court, so it is not possible for me to speak to the particular matter that she mentions. I would like to acknowledge, however, that Indigenous children and youth have been overrepresented in the child welfare system for far too long. Our government is absolutely committed to a transformation of the system to make sure that Indigenous communities are able to exercise jurisdiction and take care of their children and youth and families in the way that they want to. We know that it's critical for the health and well-being of children and youth to be connected to family, community and culture. Honourable Speaker, we've already made changes to provincial law. We've been investing in Indigenous communities for children to stay with aunties or grandmas or people in the community so they continue to have that connection. And we are absolutely committed to working in partnership with Indigenous communities, rights holders and leadership to transform the system and to make sure that Indigenous children and youth stay connected to their families.
Leader of third party, supplemental.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And I wasn't asking for a comment on the case. I was asking for this government to reconcile how it justifies spending money to fight against survivors of the child welfare system instead of spending that money to support them. For 50 years, the BC government has failed to apply for benefits and compensation for tens of thousands of children in care who have been the victims of crime. For decades, children have been taken from their families only to be neglected by the government that was supposed to be taking care of them. On CTV News, the representative plaintiff stated, quote, "I made suicide attempts as a child and I still struggle with suicidal ideation to this day. I wonder what my life could have been like if I had had timely access to those benefits." In the throne speech given just last week, this government said that they were committed to, quote, "healing the wounds of the past." But this issue is not only from the past. This government is choosing to spend public funds and resources to fight the victims of the child welfare system instead, as has happened in other provinces, of working collaboratively with them and compensating them for the decades of neglect that they experienced as wards of the province. My question, Honourable Speaker, is to the Attorney General. How does the Attorney General justify spending money to fight survivors of the child welfare system instead of spending money to support them?
Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, this is a serious issue, the over-intrusion of government into the lives of children and families in Indigenous communities. It has gone on for far too long, and our government is committed to reconciliation and to making sure that children, youth and families are properly supported and that communities exercise jurisdiction so that children and youth remain connected to their family, community and culture, because we know, Honourable Speaker, that that is the most successful outcome for those children and youth and their communities. We have been doing work to change this. We currently have the lowest number of Indigenous children and youth in care in 20 years, and there is a lot more work to do, Honourable Speaker. We are supporting and investing additional funding, for example, into cultural connections programmes, and Budget 2021 provided more than $13 million of new money to support alternatives to care so that Indigenous children and youth can stay with family. Honourable Speaker, our government is making choices of investing in children and youth and families. There's a lot more to be done, Honourable Speaker, and we are committed to achieving that transformational change. Thank you.